Here we go again. I'm sure there are many of you that have heard the news regarding the KOTOR Remake potentially leaving Aspyr. Once again, our good old friend Jason Schreier and Bloomberg have reported on it, essentially saying that it definitely has moved to Saber in Europe, based on a financial report where Embracer have claimed that a big AAA project has moved internal studios. And as always, when I feel like I have something to say that I feel needs to be said regarding these things, I'll do so here I am. Now, in the video I made a few weeks ago regarding all of this drama, I did mention that the worst case scenario for the Knights of the Old Republic remake in this specific instance was that Aspyr would lose the project and a new studio with Embracer would take over, and as of right now, it's erring on the side of likeliness. And while I can't sit here and tell you for a fact that the game has moved to Saber, what I can tell you, especially from the viewpoint of those that actually work in the studio, as of right now, the folk at Aspyr that have worked hard on the game aren't even aware of what's going on themselves. Now, to my knowledge, just under a week ago or so now, there was a huge meeting within Aspyr that involved everybody from top to bottom, because there was a huge confusion over the Embracer's financial report. And the leadership within Aspyr refused to confirm whether that report was true, but they also denied that it was true too to the people working on the game. And so to many people working on the Knights of the Old Republic remake, there hasn't been any real communication from the people at the top of Aspyr, and that financial report, that statement by Embracer, has left many people within the studio feeling disgruntled and generally upset and bitter. That there hasn't been any respectable level of communication between the people leading the company and those that are actually working on the title directly, which is kind of shocking to me considering how experienced many of these people are, especially at the top. And that's why, again, I will say, to my knowledge, there's no way I can sit here and explicitly say to you guys that yes, the game has moved to Saber Interactive. Perhaps new information will come out in a few weeks or months or whatever, but right now, things are still up in the air at Aspyr, especially from the perspective of the regular folk that are working on the game. However, my opinion, which is based on conjecture, based on conversations I've had, is that we will probably see down the line the game move away from Aspyr. Also, to clear things up, this 2022 release date that's being thrown around is complete nonsense. The game's vertical slice was literally completed 2 months ago. There is no way that this game was planned to release in 2022. And to top that off, there is no logical reason for the game to be released this year, considering the anniversary of it is next year. I'll say this again, and I'll say this with certainty, the game was projected to coincide with the 20th anniversary in 2023, and that was the release window. 2022 was never the intended release window, and this is just a complete lie that's being made up. And funnily enough, Jason Schreier, the one who's reporting on all of this and who I've been kind of challenging, directly blocked me on Twitter, despite the fact I've never mentioned him on the app or actually spoken about him in any negative light. And I think it goes to show that maybe he's feeling a little bit threatened by somebody questioning his leaks. The man even goes back on his own article on Twitter and says the game couldn't have any material delays simply because the game never had a release date. And yet his entire article prior to that, which by the way had a serious negative impact on the studio, was all about how the game had a release date of 2022 and how it was indefinitely delayed. Things don't really add up from Mr. Superleaker, but, you know, maybe I'm reading too much into it. Additionally, what also seems to be completely forgotten across the internet right now is the 2023 EA exclusivity license. There is a reason that there are no Star Wars games coming until after 2023 by other developers. The only Star Wars games that have been released not made by EA have been mobile games, which was in the contract anyway, looking at things like Force Arena, Commander, and the LEGO mobile games. Star Wars Hunters also comes under that directive of being a mobile game that came to Switch because of its capability. So again, I'll reiterate, 2022 was never the release window, never the release date. This is a complete lie. Another thing that's going around in all of these media outlets is that the game just wasn't good enough, the idea that Sony hated what was provided in the vertical slice, and that Disney and Lucasfilm weren't impressed with it either. This all comes from baseless conjecture. Everybody that I know who has worked on the game has stated that the studio were extremely proud of what they had created. There is a reason that development had gone so smoothly from when it started several years ago up until the vertical slice. The only problem is, it didn't match Sony's expectation of what they had envisioned from the game as a first-party title, despite the fact that it was exclusively timed. There is a difference between saying something is bad, which a lot of these media outlets have jumped onto, and what was envisioned by the partners. And as I said a few weeks ago in a video before, the expectation from Sony was different to what Aspyr were actually making. The vertical slice was something that they were proud of, and this is why it's been such a kick in the teeth to so many people that were working on the game directly, because it seems there was a huge miscommunication between the heads of Aspyr and those leading the project, and Sony, who wanted the game to be like a AAA first-party title, akin to something more cinematic and highly visually pleasing, like God of War, Spider-Man, Ghost of Tsushima, etc. And to top that off, the narrative that Disney and Lucasfilm weren't impressed with it either is also untruthful based on what people have been saying inside the studio. Disney, and more specifically Lucasfilm, were happy with what was shown. There is constant communication between Aspyr and Lucasfilm because Lucasfilm has to make sure that everything within the game fits the parameters set by their story group and those that try to keep a certain continuity with Star Wars stories. And Lucasfilm were happy with what was shown in the vertical slice, because supposedly, unlike Sony, they were constantly up to date with what Aspyr were making, and they were happy with what they were making. The big stickler right now is it ultimately comes down to Sony expecting something different. This is where all of the issues have come from. However, we can't lay all the blame on Sony, and we also have to look at Aspyr, as many of the issues stemmed from their leadership. When something went wrong, they made the wrong decisions and they just made things worse. For example, the sacking of the creative director and the art director wasn't done because they felt they weren't producing good work. It was done as a statement to show to Sony their loyalty in being able to deliver a project that was more in line with what Sony envisioned. And these sackings came as a complete surprise to not only those two people, but their teams, because as I mentioned, everybody was proud of what they had created, and even after they had been sacked, the consensus within the studio, especially the leadership, was that the sackings wasn't fair, and it was the wrong thing to do. This complete mishandling of the entire situation has then reverberated down to the people working on the game that have been directly cut out of the loop on what's actually going on in the bigger picture. And when you're supposed to be a team, a unit, when the people making the game are blindsided to what's going on at the top, morale drops and people become disgruntled and frustrated, and that's what's happened. There is no clear picture for those that are working on it at this time because the leadership just aren't sharing it with them, and so they are kind of all in a state of limbo regarding their position on the remake. Additionally, unlike my video a few weeks ago where I stated that development was ongoing, and it was at that time, I was even privy to some of the stuff being made, to my knowledge now, several weeks later, development has stopped at Aspyr. And because of that, many people working on the KOTOR Remake are now supporting other studios within Embracer on their games just so they can keep busy and have something to do. And also, apparently Aspyr are playing around internally with some new ideas and new titles. This is also maybe an indicator, not a fact or a confirmation, that the game has moved to Saber even without the people working on the game's knowledge. And so it's ultimately come down to what Aspyr wanted to make and what they were making versus what Sony expected them to make. And this communication from both parties hasn't been treated with the level of respect and care that it needed. And to me, this is shocking because this was Aspyr's make or break title. This was the game that was going to make this company a household name, much like BioWare had done 20 years ago. And from what I can tell, things have just been totally mishandled at the top, in regards to its communication to its partners, and more importantly, its communication with its staff, who seem to be in a state of stasis and disbelief that this has actually happened to a project that they all believed in only 3 months ago. And that is the sad nature of games development, that anything could happen, anything can change at a moment's notice, And it's really sad because I do know some people that are working on this game and I know just how much they love Knights of the Old Republic. It's a passion project for them and they loved what they had done, and to be completely blindsided and potentially shoved aside for another company is just really devastating to so many of them when they've put their hearts and souls into a project that is really important to them. Now, from here on, I don't have any sources within Saber, so if the game has moved to Saber completely, unless somebody reaches out and tries to talk to me, which I hope they do, I'm going to be completely in the dark from here on in the foreseeable future, just as you guys are. Like I've said multiple times now, the people working on the game within Aspyr haven't been told by their leadership what's going on, and many of them also haven't been given an inkling as to whether they will be able to continue their work on the project just as part of Saber instead. They are completely in the dark, and it's a complete shame. At the end of the day, they're all under Embracer because they're all owned by Embracer, and for me, if we do move forward without Aspyr, my hope is that so many people working on this project won't lose their livelihoods because they put so much into it, especially those on the development team and the design teams, and I really hope that they're given the opportunities to continue working on it just under a different part of Embracer. But as of right now, we just have to wait and see. I highly doubt that the development of a KOTOR remake will just silently move to another company despite what Bloomberg are reporting, and I would imagine that there will be a statement of some kind, but the general silence from Aspyr and all of the parties involved is just as surprising to those working on the game as it is to me. I did explicitly ask my sources whether or not Aspyr would make a statement and come out and say something, and even they don't understand why they haven't. So my suggestion to everyone is just to be patient right now and see what comes out from an official source. But I do believe that the KOTOR remake will come out, like I said in my last video. I'm not worried about its existence. It just seems like Aspyr are likely not going to be the ones to have their name on the title, and I'm still not worried about it in general. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button, and honestly, share it with everybody that you know that loves Knights of the Old Republic, because there's so much information going around regarding this remake. And if you haven't, perhaps consider subscribing to join the biggest growing Knights of the Old Republic community on YouTube, and to keep up to date with all of the information as I hear it. I'll see you guys in the next video. But until then, may the Force be with you. Always.